Tonight, the House passed the Laken-Riley Act. It was passed with bipartisan support. It's one of the first bills, immigration bills, that was passed, that Trump will be signing coming from the House and the Senate. The Senate passed it last week. So we're going to look at this video and an article about what the bill entails.
Just learned here that the Laken Riley Act has just passed with bipartisan support, a vote of 263 to 156, which leaves 46 House Democrats breaking rank here on that. So clearly, I think, Mary Alice Parks, when we think about a show of support here, reaching across the aisle, this will be the first act that he passes here. And Mary Alice, he had to do it with Democratic support.
Yeah, the margins are so thin in the House. He would need Democrats on board for almost every piece of legislation. But in this case, sort of comfortable margin. Look, this is a big win for the new administration, for Trump to make good on a promise. He focused so much of his campaign on the border, on undocumented immigrants. This speaks not only to that, but I'm thinking about the name in particular, the Laken Riley Act. Of course, on the campaign trail, President Trump talked about Laken Riley so often. Her gruesome death and murder, talked about people that had been the victims of crimes that he talked about perpetrated by undocumented immigrants. You know, this is a controversial bill. I will say, though, it calls for the detention of undocumented immigrants accused of either of smaller crimes like theft without due process. So it's an expensive bill. A lot of immigration officials talking about how it will cost billions of dollars to indefinitely detain people that are just accused of crimes, not convicted of crimes. But of course, it's trying to get at essentially a loophole where some undocumented immigrants have been accused of crimes in the past, but have not been sort of adjudicated fully. And in the case of Laken Riley, where someone was back sort of out on the streets and then committed a crime, Kena.
And we know that ICE has said they are a little bit concerned about having the resources to actually implement this law, and they're concerned about the cost of that as well. So we'll have to watch that moving forward. But we also, Maria, are getting some new information here as well about the troop surge that we may see here at the southern border that the president has authorized. What's the latest there?
You know, Kana, information is trickling out as to where these troops may go. We're still trying to get confirmation of that, but we do know that as of today, they will be sending troops to the border. I can tell you we met with El Paso City leaders earlier today. They tell us, one, they don't need the troops. They don't want the troops. They feel like this is a very safe border community. But two, they said that they've been having constant communication, constant conversations with their allies in the federal government and checking with them to see if this might be a place for where those troops could go. As of right now, they are getting no indication that the troops will end up here along the Texas border, especially in the El Paso area. But I just want to show you very quickly, Kana, take a quick look around us. You can see this right here. This is the bridge that actually takes you all the way into Mexico. It is one of the legal ports of entry we talk a lot about. And then obviously you can see flow of traffic is business as usual. This is a normal day. You know, leaders here in this community want to make very clear that things are calm here. And although there's fears in the community, this is a very safe city.
Right. So the question here of what will they actually be doing, right? Is this a show of force down there? Is this some kind of deterrence to be seen here? It sounds like we just have a lot of information, though, coming in at this hour also, Luke, about exactly how, you know, state and local authorities will be partaking in this. And it sounds like the president doesn't want anything to do with people that aren't going to get on board here with his immigration plans.
Well, that's exactly right. And, you know, a top Justice Department official this morning sent a memo to the, workforce that basically said anybody who attempts to restrict or impede immigration authorities from doing their job could be subject to criminal prosecution. Emil Bove, who's the acting attorney general at the time he sent this memo, said, quote, federal law prohibits state and local actors from resisting, obstructing, and otherwise failing to comply with lawful immigration-related commands and requests. The U.S. Attorney's Office and litigating components of the Department of Justice shall investigate incidents involving any such misconduct for potential prosecution. So this is just one avenue. Of course, in the EOs that were signed on Monday, there was some talk about withholding DOJ funds. So this is all kind of on message for the president and this White House.
All right, and I do want to pass along here some reporting from our team at the Pentagon from the acting Secretary of Defense, who's saying they have essentially a three-pronged initiative here. They're talking about the troop surge that represents a 60% increase now in active duty ground forces. They'll be providing military aircraft to support deportation flights, as well as the construction of temporary and permanent physical barriers. So again, this is a lot of news coming in here fast and furious today in these executive actions. Mary Alice, Luke, and Maria, our thanks to all of you.
All right, so I definitely wanted to look at this article and another article. One of the things that nobody's really talking about is that this could have some constitutional challenges. Even though illegal aliens are not full citizens with rights, they are subject to constitutional protections and due process. For people who don't really know what due process is, they normally do have to work out the whole jurisprudence, legal adjudication, meaning they have to normally be tried and convicted of a crime and found guilty. And then, of course, there's appeals processes after that. So that may be something that could impede a lot of, could impede some of this law, if not all of this law. Um, but that's just something that nobody's really talking about. So here we are at NPR. Um, and of course, it's kind of saying that, it's a first immigration bill to sign, a measure that would make it easier for federal immigration officials to detain and deport those without legal status who are charged with crimes ranging from minor theft to assault on law enforcement. Of course, it's probably coming after, a lot of, if anybody was kind of watching in New York, probably about 4 to 6 months ago, a couple of those migrants or illegal aliens beat up on a few police officers. Well, I know it was one police officer, but I think it was like a couple. Don't quote me on that. We can always review that. Obviously 263, House 156 with 46 Democrats. Um, so here's one of the bigger issues um, that I would actually say. The measures direct federal immigration enforcement to detain and deport those without legal status charged with minor theft or shoplifting. And the only reason why I kind of say that is like, they haven't had their day in court. So obviously there's Supreme Court precedent for that. But with our Supreme Court, who really knows what's going to happen? Um, but of course, the critics measure argue that the proposal skips the current practice of waiting until someone is convicted before considering the removal. And of course, a lot of that kind of comes from the fact that um, a lot of migrants or illegals that are committing these crimes, they kind of flee afterwards, and it becomes very difficult for them to be found for the court process. So I don't know if the Supreme Court or federal courts, well, ultimately it's going to go to the Supreme Court, but I don't know if some of the federal courts will actually have a split until that moment where, hey, maybe they're not allowed to make bond, or maybe you might have to put on an ankle monitor, or you might have to do something else. You can't just willy-nilly deport somebody charged with a crime, because then anybody can just necessarily just be charged. So that's just kind of some of the legalities that I predict that may kind of come up. But obviously Lakeland, Raleigh, Laken Raleigh was a Georgia University nursing student who was killed last year by the Venezuelan man in the United States without legal status. Her death became a rallying cry for Republicans early last year to criticize the Biden administration's approach to border security. The man, Jose Ibarrio, was later sentenced to life in prison without parole. And this is kind of where they're kind of getting at. He had previously been charged with shoplifting in New York. Republicans argue that this law would have enabled his deportation earlier and would have prevented Riley's murder. But of course, he was charged with shoplifting and left New York. So, that's obviously going to cause, as I said, some legal challenges. So we'll see if this is considered constitutional. Um, and of course, research shows that immigrants commit fewer crimes than those born in the United States. Now, talking about last week, there was a bipartisan vote with 12 Democrats joining the Republicans. Nobody, obviously, Chuck Schumer. They want to put this part where Chuck Schumer and other Democrats had proposed this bipartisan comprehensive border security deal. But that was kind of washed out by Trump. Um, obviously, a lot of the Democrats kind of see this win of President Donald Trump as a reason to be stricter on the border. Um, I do kind of agree. Um, I mean, I not kind of, but I do agree with a lot of what they are proposing, not just Democrats or anything, but definitely have to have stricter border security. I don't know what that's actually going to entail. I don't know if it's just finishing the wall. I don't know if it's having more drones, and of course, they're going to have more ICE agents and stuff like that. But again, that doesn't negate a lot of the fact that a lot of people are flying into this country, overstaying their visas. That's also not that's not even really looking at how a lot of people are kind of coming in through Canada, which is also a big thing as well, which is literally almost unprotected. And then how do you protect it with the Great Lakes? Um, there's a lot to it. It would cost $26 billion to implement across personal costs, increase of detention, resources, transportation, and more. Um, Wall Street Journal expects it to be in upwards up to 100 billion to 300 billion for more border security. So it could be a costly thing, could cause inflation. And of course, big government, more bureaucracy. So it's also always something to think about. Um, duh, 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 duh. And of course, this talks about, taking away fundamental due process tenets of our legal system. All right. So another bill in accordance with that was the uh, Sarah's law. Um, Definitely wanted to look at this one. That also kind of passed today in accordance with it, um, honoring Sarah Root. Um, that's the Lakeland Raleigh one. Um, Obviously, the Iowans um, stems from the death of Miss Root, a 21-year-old Council Bluffs resident who was hit and killed by an undocumented immigrant who was driving drunk. The crash occurred just 16 hours after Root graduated summa cum laude from Bellevue University. Obviously, this is her. Um, Kind of sad. Definitely a cute woman. Obviously just graduated and graduated with honors, and 21 is pretty sad. Um, her parents kind of have said my beautiful daughter Sarah was taken away from us way too soon at the hands of a criminal who should have never been in our country. It's just common sense for illegal immigrants who harm or kill American citizens to be detained and punished. This is them. I'm very sure they are extremely proud of their daughter graduating with high honors. Then, of course, combined, these actions will close the loopholes that for too long have allowed murderers who come here illegally to roam free in our communities and commit more crimes. These two young women, Sarah Root and Lakeland Raleigh, and their families deserve justice. Um, um, Obviously, this isn't the first time he's introduced Sarah's Law. Every Congress since his election has said in a statement that he was thrilled to see the language advance after so many years of advocacy. Sarah's Law not only delivers justice for the Root family, but also ensures that any illegal immigrant who harms or kills an American citizen is swiftly detained and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. With Trump, with President Trump in the White House, we will continue to secure our border, build the wall, and combat heinous crimes committed by illegal migrants. Um, so yeah. Um, Obviously, like I said, some of these issues may be challenged in court. The laws may or may not be considered unconstitutional. It's just time will tell. Obviously, the litigation process can last up to several years. So it's just something to be taken into account. Um, but we shall see. I kind of wanted to be on the front line with this news and kind of give y'all a little bit more detailed information about it as they passed. But y'all be good. Y'all be safe. Peace.